Hello, hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me again. This is interview number 5 or 6, I'm losing track now, of Women's Wisdom. And today I'm in conversation with Nyree Yali. So I have known Nyree, gosh, it must be 5 or 6 years, but possibly longer because we knew each other a long time before we actually met each other. So we connected online through, I believe it was homeschooling stuff, but we haven't really quite nailed that one down, but we know each other that way anyway. Um, and since I've moved to Tasmania, Nyree is another Tasmanian living in the south of the state. We have actually managed to meet face to face. We are now work colleagues, and Nyree is, I brought her on board to talk to us today because she's a naturopath. She's also an advocate for low tox living and an all-round wealth of information about, well, as I said, low tox living, how to lighten the load in our homes, on our bodies, and in our lives in general. So lots of useful tips. So that's how I know you, Nyree. What do you want us to know about you?
Well, thanks for that, Pip, and thank you for inviting me to be part of this series. Yes, so as you mentioned, I do have a background as a naturopath. I haven't practiced clinically for many years because I was first called to become a naturopath because of my own health issues growing up, right from when I was a baby. And I said in our family, we joke that we have a cesspool rather than a gene pool with all the different health conditions we've got going on. So after years of antibiotics and steroids and all these different things, I got to about the age of 18 and I went, enough is enough. Everything seemed to be making something else worse. And I knew there had to be a better way of health, and I wanted to help other families to avoid the same kind of patterns of illness that we had. So that's when I was on a cruise after high school and sitting in the cabin alone one day, and it was like, ping, I need to be a naturopath. It was, one of those
Divine intervention.
Yeah, you hear the voices and all that stuff. And yeah, so I got home, enrolled in my course, did that for a few years, then ran a clinic south of Adelaide for a little while. Then life took a bit of a different turn, ended up moving to Tasmania where, again, went on a different tangent, and ended up, my eldest daughter was born nearly 15 years ago, she'll be 15 next week. And yeah, so when she was about 3 or 4, she went, you know what, I'm not going to school. And that was news to me. So we then talked to some friends who were homeschooling and embarked upon that journey of homeschooling. So really what I had planned earlier in life didn't quite work out the way I had planned, but it seems life keeps bringing me back to this whole thing around health and helping other people to, avoid that same kind of the pattern of illness that runs through families. So about 3.5 years ago, I found myself in hospital, completely unable to control the right side of my body. I was having convulsions and all sorts of weird things going on. And it was really, really scary. I didn't, I'm lying there not knowing if I would see my kids grow up because, when you've got all these neurological symptoms, of course, your brain starts thinking of all the worst case scenarios. And the doctor ended up saying, well, there's nothing wrong with you, dear. It's just stress. And at the time, I hadn't felt stressed until I said that. And it's like, what do you mean it's stress? I have no control over my weight. I didn't feel psychologically or emotionally stressed by anything at the time, but what I discovered through that process was that it really came down to postnatal depletion. I said my youngest daughter was 2. I was homeschooling the eldest. I was breastfeeding. I wasn't sleeping. Didn't have much of an appetite, so I wasn't eating a lot. Just everything obviously impacted my body, but I didn't realize how much of an impact it was having until I had this full-on crash. So it was not long after that, probably for 3 months or so, an opportunity came up to go into a new business that was all to do with nutrition, health, gut health, making food your medicine, clean living, low tox, everything that I was already focused on anyway, right from, I said, 25, 27 years ago. So that's really how I came to where I am now, is just through my own personal experience. But I said the universe keep pulling me back to this whole core of wanting to help people to make healthier choices and cut through all the greenwashing that we see these days and all of that stuff, and really work on, I said, gut health, reducing stress, all those things that I've had experience with. I figured I could see that as a negative, or I could use that to go on to help other people. So that's what I'm doing now.
Yeah, perfect. And I can see, I hear my own story in a certain way, I guess, certainly in terms of depletion, running yourself down, and the stress that comes from, you don't consider yourself stressed because you're loving and adoring these little beings that you've brought into the world. But oh boy, is the body working overtime to try and keep up and to be absolutely everything that we seem to be told that we should be, and questioning and challenging everything that we're doing because somebody somewhere is telling us that we shouldn't be. So you're really bombarded. But on top of that too, the thing that came into my mind was environmental stress. That we are bombarded by so many toxins that aren't within our control. We live in this world that basically has a base level of toxicity that we consume because we live and breathe on the earth. So the only way you can control it are the things that are going into your system and onto your system and into your home. So, it's a great thing. But I'm thinking there's a lot of people out there that are going to be relating to the effects of stress right now. Certainly with people's worlds being turned on their head and suddenly being confronted with having to do things or do without things that they've never considered. So what's something that feels very hands-on and very tangible that you could bring to them in this moment if they're out there watching?
Obviously there's kind of two sides to this. On one hand, people do need to be focusing more on health, and sometimes that means investing some money in themselves. But at the same time, I know that there's also a lot of people losing their jobs at the moment, and there's all the stress that can bring. And what we do know is that stress really impacts the immune system. So one of the things that I was reading, Dr. Bruce Lipton was saying the other day, that the fear of COVID-19 is going to kill more people than the actual virus itself. And there was stats out of the US last week where it's saying for every 1% increase in unemployment, that's going to result in 38,000 deaths, just purely through mental health, suicide, kind of obviously nutritional deficiencies and things like that. So for me, there's two kind of things that I look at moving forward. One is gut health, because stress is going to affect our gut, and also all the toxins that you've mentioned affect our gut, the glyphosate that's in our food, the chemicals that are spread around us every day. I mean, our kids are being born pre-polluted with 287, chemicals, and that's only the ones they've tested for. There's likely thousands more.
How many? 287.
287 have been tested for.
Wow.
But Professor Mark Cohen says that that's probably seriously underestimating, because they just haven't tested for all the others.
Wow.
There are about 200 chemicals that the average woman puts on her body each day before she leaves the house. Well, not so much leaving the house at the moment.
Face the world.
Yeah, that's right. It's, the shampoo, the conditioner, the body wash, the perfume, the deodorant, all the makeup, the toothpaste, all of these things. Might even be, the fragrance and the washing powder in your clothes, things like that. So I say I can go on so many tangents.
It's a big subject.
Focus. It is, because when you first invited me to talk, I'm like, oh, what am I going to talk about? And then I started thinking about it. I'm like, we're not going to cram everything into half an hour, so I've got to try and stay focused.
We'll have a series within a series.
Yeah, it's a whole other thing by itself. So obviously a big part of it is reducing stress as much as we can. Mm-hmm. Now, I know you asked about toxins, and I'll get to that, but because gut health is so important for our immune system, I think that's something that's really we need to focus on at the moment. I'll talk a little bit about that first. So it might be doing meditation. I mean, there's free meditations online. I do a meditation program that's been put together by a friend of mine, 50 days of meditation. And each one's only about 7 or 8 minutes long. So that's really easy to fit into the day. It might be yoga. Again, there's, so many yoga teachers are, closed down their studios at the moment because of the virus. So a lot of them are doing online classes. So much access to these resources at the moment. Yeah. And I said again, YouTube, there's fantastic opportunities to, find things there. If you can increase your intake of fermented food, that's another good tip. Things like, your sauerkraut, kimchi, kombucha, kefir, all those kinds of things which can be made at home. I said I'm not going to go into too much detail of that, but just some things for people to look into. There's also fermented food products that you can buy. You just add a teaspoon to a drink or a smoothie or your food, and that's a really easy way of looking after your gut, because right now we need to keep our gut working as best we can so that we do have the immune system to deal with any viruses, whether it's COVID-19, a cold, a flu, anything. This time of year's coming into, virus season anyway. So that's a good thing to do regardless of any other risk factor. With the chemical burden side of things, there's a couple of apps that I recommend people download. They're free apps. First one is called The Chemical Maze by Bill Statham.
I'll write this down. I'll put it under your video.
Yeah, sure. Yep. And the other one is called Think Dirty. So the Chemical Maze is good for looking at ingredients in food as well as some cosmetics. Think Dirty is more about cosmetics. Now it is US based, that one. Yep. So not all of the products we have are included in there, but it's a good base to look at. Mm-hmm. There's also the EWG website, the Environmental Working Group, where people can look at the Dirty Dozen and Clean 15. Now, again, it's US based, so there might be slight differences, but in Australia, we have similar regulations around chemicals to the US. We have a self-regulated chemical industry, which means that they approve what chemicals can go into the products. So that's both agricultural, pharmaceutical chemicals, as well as into cosmetic products. Whereas in the EU, they have independent testing of all these things. So in US and Australia, we've had, I think, 12 or 13, I can't remember what the last count was, chemicals that have been banned in cosmetics. In the EU, it's 1,300.
Wow.
So the difference between the two. So we're pretty much guinea pigs. We're using all these things that, have been banned in other countries. Yeah. Because I said, it's a self-regulated industry. Yeah. So that's... just makes me angry. Yeah. But this is where people need to really start looking at what it is they're putting on their bodies, and by using these apps, I mean, right now is the perfect time because a lot of people are home. Yes. So go to your bathroom cupboard, go to your pantry, you don't have to do it all at one time, but just, set aside, half an hour a day or something and use these apps and just check the different ingredients on your products
Yeah.
and see what the effects are.
And, it's a big thing because I just know doing, local grocery shopping, and, you wander in and you sort of see, well, one thing I noticed as soon as I went in was no flour, no sugar, no pasta. So I'm thinking, well, people are going to be really relying on those things, and in and of themselves, they're not poison, but the quantities and the way we rely on them are certainly having a detrimental impact on people's bodies. But also things like, what was sold out in the bathroom aisle, even. So, the toothpaste brands that had gone, the soap brands that had gone, all the more natural ones were still there in abundance. And I went, that's so interesting to me. So it's such a big learning curve, I guess, for so many, the majority of people. I would hesitate to say, but it really stood out to me because there's not a lot that I buy from the supermarket, but certainly what I wanted to buy, pretty much I could go in and buy because it was still there in abundance. And I went, oh, okay, I knew I wasn't kind of the average, but wow. So this kind of information is actually really vital because the more people educate themselves, and that is a process, but then once the purchasing becomes your new norm. It becomes much easier because you're not having to stop and read every label and,
That's it. I said, once you know, you can't unknow. And, that's one of the things that I think makes it kind of easy for me to live this life now is because I have seen and lived the result of, using the kind of everyday products that are out there on the market, and it's just not worth it. I mean, people obviously, I said at the moment, are considering their budget.
Yeah.
But you kind of have to offset it with, what effect is it going to have on your health long term? So there are
things, I can certainly put my hand up as we've pretty much been a single income family for 5 people for for the last 20 years really, because I've been a stay-at-home mum, so my income has certainly been very erratic, and it's the cream on the top on the occasions that it happens to be regular enough. And look, you do sort of tend to think that more natural products or organic products are more expensive, and in some cases they are, but then it sort of depends on how you balance that out. So our shopping trolley is more full of ingredients rather than prepared food. My bathroom cabinet looks pretty sparse and pretty bare compared to many because I just don't use a lot of stuff. So, and our kids have been taught that as well. That's kind of what's been available. So it is a bit of it's a rethink. It's coming from a different perspective really, isn't it? Because you don't have to miss out. It's just
this is one of the reasons I suggested the Dirty Dozen for foods, because people can have a look at which foods are the most heavily sprayed and which you can probably get away with not having to necessarily buy the organic version. If you can only get a conventionally grown version, they're likely to be lower in chemicals anyway. So I think that's a really good place for people to start, is because at the moment trying to get access to perhaps organic fresh food may not be as easy. Like you said though, it's a little bit like people will go for the other products before the organic, so you can walk into a supermarket some days and pick up the organic stuff quite easily. But it's also about reaching out now to the farmers who are producing these things but maybe can't get their products sold in the store. I was reading a story the other day of a farmer who's mid-harvest, but they can't get the products into the supermarket won't take them.
Well, that's I was saying before, I've actually been taking a trip out to one of our local farmers for the last couple of weeks since our local farmers market closed down, because I thought, well, I want fresh fruit and veg and they've got an abundance of it, so let's support them and I get what I want out of it. And I've actually just been going on behalf of our street and a few other locals around here to make the trip worthwhile. But, that's certainly been, something that's kept us well supplied in fresh picked, freshly grown, and, good relationship with our market farmer.
Yeah. So it's win-win really. Yeah. You're getting better quality produce as, keeping them afloat in these, kind of awkward and difficult times.
Yeah.
So that's another thing. There are quite a few Facebook groups popping up, communities trying to help each other out, support the local farmers and things like that. So, if you want to go on Facebook, search for your local groups, that's another really good thing to do as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, even just, get your take on this, that even if, people either can't be bothered or, they're so busy trying to scramble back from where they are that they don't want to look at the apps and the various things, even actually just going back to cooking from scratch.
Yeah.
It's going to eliminate a lot of chemicals in food simply in the form of additives. So, if that's something that you could sort of suggest for somebody who wants to take a baby step and maybe has a bit more time to cook and those sorts of things, or is that not really going to be of much help?
Again, it's going to depend a little bit on the quality of the ingredients. If they've been heavily sprayed, that's going to have a negative effect on the gut and things like that. But certainly from the point of view of avoiding the preservatives and the additives and everything like that, we should all be getting back to cooking from scratch anyway. So in some ways I see our current situation as beneficial because it's making people realize what is important. It's you hear so many people saying, oh, I don't have time to cook, or between the kids and work and school and all these things, I don't have time to do anything and I wish the world would just stop. Well, the world has just stopped. This is your chance to focus on what's important. Get back to nourishing your body, supporting your family, supporting neighbours like you're doing. You're driving out to buy vegetables and things for your local neighbours. So absolutely, getting back to cooking from scratch will help to reduce the load of, toxins from the point of view of preservatives and just things that we don't even realise that we're eating every day, because it's just so easy to go and buy something and pull it off the shelf and shove it in our mouths and not think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and as you say, it's sort of one of the other things I noticed, is that the tins of everything have gone, tin beans and or vegetables of all description. But again, I find it cheaper to just go and buy the dry beans, and I can afford to buy the dry organic beans, soak them, cook them up in batches and freeze them for when I need them. So they're habits. They're things that I've been doing for a long time. And I managed to actually do while we were travelling in our caravan, believe it or not. Smaller version, but, managed to do it. So for me, they're things that kind of help to, like I said, it's my new norm. I don't very often buy tinned stuff.
And the thing is,
even if I wanted to, I couldn't. So buying up the glut of things and cooking them up and freezing them for later, or but like I said, with things like the dried beans, it's not hard to soak and portion and freeze. So they're all really simple things to do, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing with canned food is, because of the way it's heated to preserve it after the canning process, it's killing off a lot of the nutrients anyway. And a lot of cans have lining inside now. Often that's BPA, which is an endocrine disruptor, so it's going to mess with your hormones. But even those that say BPA free still have an epoxy lining which may contain chemicals that are even worse than BPA.
Epoxy, isn't that blue? Epoxy resin? Am I thinking of the same thing?
It's kind of a similar chemical structure, so it's the way they kind of put the plastic together.
Gross, really, isn't
it? So actually, I said this is a good thing, getting away from can. I mean, canned is fine if that's all you can get.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if you can get, like you said, dried beans or, things uncanned, whether it be fresh vegetables, whatever it might be, and do some preserving yourself, cooking up the beans. It takes you can put them in a bowl of water, soak them overnight, cook them up the next day, and it's done. You can do that while you're doing other things. It doesn't take up a lot of time. So that's something that's easy to implement.
And in terms of, you mentioned earlier, the amount of toxins that the average woman would put on her skin. What would be a simple thing to swap over? Because obviously we put these things on our skin and our hair and our bodies because we want the desired result. So we don't want to miss out on that, but there's obviously better alternatives. What's something that perhaps is easy at this point in time to access? Either it might be able to be bought online, or it might be something that you have in your home that you can, create for yourself. What would be something that you could suggest to start off with, get the ball rolling?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many recipes online for making your own products, whether it be shampoo, conditioner, toothpaste, deodorant, all of these things. But if there was one thing I would suggest for people, that is to get rid of anything that contains the word perfume or fragrance. Because unless it's scented purely with just pure essential oils, anything with perfume, fragrance, any of those words in there could be hiding anywhere up to 3,000 chemicals.
Wow.
Because again, the fragrance industry is self-regulated, and they can put they've got 3,000 chemicals that they can select from. The average fragrance contains 14 different chemicals, and they don't have to disclose what any of those are. So you may see, perfume and think, it just makes it smell nice, but you're actually getting up to 14 different chemicals that are affecting your health. So straight up, anything that has perfume, you want to replace that with other versions. Now, there are a lot of companies these days doing products that are only scented with essential oils, or they're unfragranced. There's online, one of the marketplaces that I like using is Inner Origin. It's an Australian marketplace, and they have an independent product advisory board checking all the products before they're allowed to be sold. So they make sure that there are no toxic chemicals in there. There's none of the parabens or phthalates or any of those things that are going to mess up with our hormones or our endocrine system or our gut or brain function or any of that. So they have, a naturopath, health professionals, legal professionals checking to make sure it's all complete truth on label. So that's one of the places that I like to shop for things, because I can go there and not have to worry about what's on the label, because someone's already looked at it all.
They've checked the app for you.
Yeah, they've checked it all out. So you don't have to stress about, what's this thing? I'm going to learn about this ingredient, what this does. I mean, if you don't want to, there is somewhere you can go and shop and know that things are safe. So, but if you're going to look for one ingredient in particular, ditch anything with fragrance or perfume.
Brings to mind laundry products. As soon as you said perfume, I actually skipped straight off personal products and went straight to laundry products, because as soon as I walk down the laundry aisle at the supermarket, it burns my nose. I actually feel really quite and I notice if somebody's, if I've been somewhere or somebody's actually washed something for me, and I can immediately smell it, because I actually make my own laundry detergent. But I can immediately, and I find it really quite really harsh. Particularly the smell is what I notice. It feels like my nose is burning. So that was the first thing that popped into my head when you said perfume and fragrance. I just went, that's almost to the point of overwhelm.
And that was something a friend of mine was talking about the other day. She had bought a jacket from a secondhand clothing store, and it was I can't remember how many times she'd washed it, but she could still smell the detergent that had been used on it previously. And this is why they add these chemicals to the fragrances, is to make them last longer.
Okay.
So they're fixatives, so that it smells nice and fresh all the time. But for those who are sensitive to them, it's obviously not fresh.
Smells
And
toxic.
sick. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So there are brands out there again who do use only essential oils or have unscented laundry products. So that's another one that's really easy to swap out.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
So a couple of brands that come to mind. There's Kin, there's Eco Store, there's Happy. There's a whole different range of brands that are out there that offer alternatives to what you'll find on the supermarket shelf.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, look, I think we're coming to our time now, Nyree, so thank you so much for your time. But I also just wanted to throw in there, now that we've sort of chatted through some of that, I noticed on your website that you're offering people a call to help them work out what it is they might need to swap out within their pantry, their bathroom cupboard, their laundry. So if anybody is keen to start swapping out some of those products, but you feel like you need a helping hand, and you can hear by the way Nyree speaks that she's really knowledgeable on this stuff. She's researched and understood it for a long time now, I'd imagine. So if you'd like to have that help, you'll be able to connect in with Nyree. I'll put her web details underneath the video as well, so you can connect in, and that's a service that Nyree offers to give you a kickstart on making some of those changes to help reduce the toxic load on your body, which is actually going to help your body then respond to whatever comes your way. Like we said, we're heading into the Australian cold and flu season anyway, so we're usually bombarded with various viruses and bugs and things at this time of year. So the healthier you are and the healthier your gut is, the more likely you are to be able to come through that less scathed than perhaps you might otherwise. So thank you so much for joining me, Nyree. Really appreciate you being here and sharing your knowledge. It is a huge subject, so we have merely scratched the surface today. But please, if you'd like to hear more from Nyree, just let me know in the comments, and I'm happy to have a series within a series, and we can go into specific subjects a lot more in depth, because Nyree knows a lot of stuff, and the answers are out there. You've just got to know where to look. So thanks for sharing with us today, Nyree, and never know, we might have you back here again very soon if you've got the time.
No worries, Pip. Thanks for having me here today.
Bye, everybody. We'll see you next time round.
Bye.